I coached basketball at West High School, so I was the varsity assistant coach for 2 years from 93 to 95, and then I was the head boys coach from 95 to 2003, and then for the next 15 years after that, I coached youth basketball. So my kids anywhere from 4th grade through 12th grade AAU, and so I hope to retire eventually and coach basketball again. So looking forward to that. So we'll go along. Each of us will just give an introduction of our name, the school we were at, and then the years that we coached, our coaching experience. So we'll go here with Coach Parker.
Ron Parker, I was at Appleton East from 76 to 2000 and enjoyed every second of it. And I was 7 years previous at Appleton West. I was assistant coach on that state championship team my first year. I thought it was pretty easy then. And then next 6 years I was a junior varsity coach after that. So then I got the head job at East in 2000. 76 rather.
So I'm Bob Biebel. I was the head boys basketball coach at Xavier from 1988, 87, 88 through 96, 97. Previously to that, I grew up in Chicago, so I coached some 7th grade to high school in the Catholic League there, and then came up here, coached at Lawrence. After Xavier, I went up to St. Mary's in Winona and coached for 8 years at the collegiate level. Came back and did some AAU coaching, but that's kind of my gig.
My name is Greg Hartjes. I was the Appleton North men's coach from 2003 to 2008. I brought, since you guys aren't rocking your Appleton West gear, I graduated from Appleton West. I played for Gene Woodley. I graduated in 1993. Dave Steepak was an assistant coach there. So I found the shirt. So there you go. So we went to state when I was a junior. Lost to Pete Wade and Frank Secker, 1992. Oshkosh North down at the state tournament. But so I graduated from West, and my coaching career started like 3 days after I graduated high school. I started coaching when I was 17. My dad was a high school coach in Fenimore and DeForest in the Madison area before that, so I grew up around it. So I started with Bob Semling and Bob Parker at UW Stevens Point. Got me into coaching their summer camps, and then when I was at UW La Crosse, I coached 2 years at La Crosse Logan for Tom Manchester, and then coached 2 years at UW La Crosse as well with the men's program for Charlie Gross, and then had some other college opportunities and interviews and stuff, and then got a teaching job in Marinette, coached 2 years there, and then I was the JV coach at Appleton North when I came back home. Paul Engen gave me a call and said there's a social studies job open, and so the rest is history. And then I was the head boys coach for 5 years. After that, I filled in another year as a freshman coach there, and I've been coaching middle school, coached my sons and all of their junior stuff. So I just turned 50, so I guess that's like 33 years. I just signed the contract. We just got the contract today for Einstein Middle School boys, so I signed that already. So I'm still coaching. Great game of basketball.
My name is Shane Knudsen. I'm currently coaching in Little Chute. I've been coaching for 30 plus years now. I actually started with Greg at Appleton West. Greg and I actually went to high school together, and then I came over to Appleton, was his assistant for a while, and then I was the JV coach for a while, and then I took over for Greg after he retired from coaching. And then from there, I coached West for, I think, 12 years total. I did 4 years as the varsity boys coach. Left. My wife and I had some kids. They were younger, so it was easier to be back in Little Chute, so I started coaching in Little Chute. I've coached there now for, I think, 18-ish years. I've coached every level besides freshman. 15 years of youth basketball with all my kids. AAU stuff. I coached the varsity girls in Little Chute for 3 years when my daughter went through. And now I'm back with the varsity boys as an assistant, as our youngest is going to be a sophomore this year.
So those are introductions, and I have a handful of questions, and we'll just kind of work our way across and change order. So the first question here is, can you talk a little bit about 2 or 3 of the most positive memories you have from coaching, and we'll start here with Ron and work our way that way. 2 or 3 most positive memories.
Well, they were all positive. Most of them, I shouldn't say all, but the majority of them were positive. I enjoyed it a great deal. I guess I'm proud enough to pat myself on the back. I never missed 1 minute of practice or a game in 31 years. And our kids put it on the line as well. I tell you, they'd show up sick and play and things like that. So I'm really proud of that right there. Overall, when we took over at East, we had to overcome some barriers. You know, highest finish in the league was 4th place, and 1 sectional we got to, and whatnot. So we had to work it out. I was looking at T-shirts here. I remember the first T-shirt that I handed out in our summer camp was "I can and I will," and that's kind of funneled right through the program for a few years. And we only won 6 games our first year. Then we won 10, then 13, then 15. We were pretty much off to the races. We were pretty much a player developmental type program. We had I think we've had a lot of great players, but I think of like a guy like Dave Stolkebush. His junior year, he's our 6th man. He scored 68 points all year. His senior year, he scored 538. And per game average, he was right up there. And even like Eric Biebel, his first team All-State, he didn't start till midway through his junior year. And so we had a lot of guys that really exploded. Dave Wiegert would be one of the 10 best players I ever coached. He never started a game in his life till his senior year. And he was perfect. He would grade out perfect fundamentally when he'd play a game, and he had some talent. It just took a while to get it out of him on that. So there's a lot of great things and great memories. I think we're going to go over some of the best teams we had after a while. So I won't get into that. But basically, it was a thing. I wish I had kept statistics. I'd say 75% of our starters were seniors, and it wasn't because they're seniors. I would have started a 4th grader if he was good enough. It took him that time element, so to speak, to get to where he wanted to be, where he could really be a good player. So I think a lot of kids just stuck with it, thinking, hey, eventually I'm going to get there, and most of them did. So that's it.
Yeah.
I think, from a wins-loss perspective, we were fortunate to win the state championship in 1995, finished 2nd in 96, 97, so I'm good at losing state championship games. But beyond that, I think games are games, and high school basketball isn't about winning and losing. It's about relationships and that type of thing, and what happens during that time. I think one of the things is right now the positive I take. My friends right now are all my former players. I probably spend 90 to 95% of my time with former players, whether that's golfing, going on vacations, those types of things, hanging out. That they've taught me more in these last probably 10 years than I probably could have taught them in the time that I had them. I think, positive wins. Somebody's got to lose, somebody's got to win. You play your hardest, but keeping those relationships and really trying to develop people into outstanding citizens, leadership, and putting them in challenging situations, challenging people to fail. Failing is awesome, okay, because we get better. The year that we won state in 95, we had probably our worst loss ever in 94 at the state tournament, and kind of grew from there. One thing becomes of another. So I think for me, those are the biggest positives. From a personal standpoint, my family is who they are because of sports and because of Xavier. To me, there was no greater place in the world to coach. We wrote a book. There was a book out, Hawk Hoopla, and I got the chance to read the foreword, and it was Hoosiers on steroids. Okay, it was the 80s, 90s version of Hoosiers at Xavier, and that's what it meant. And it meant something to people after the game, before the game. Those are really the positives.
Ron was talking a little bit about what he walked into in terms of tradition or maybe lack of or success. And I walked into a situation, there hadn't been winning, Appleton North opened in 95, 96. And the first year North opened, obviously no one was from North, so they were from all over the place. And some good kids that had been at FEL and maybe Appleton West and some other places came to North. and they had a good start to the season, and but that was the only year, when I took over, that was the only year that North had ever been 500 or better. And so there wasn't a lot of success or tradition or expectation of success. So I guess that's one of the things that is one of the positive memories that some of my assistants still talk about, some of the guys still talk about, former players, is, our first year we started like 0-2, 0-3, and then we won at Neenah, and it was like, all right, here we go. All right, and we didn't win another game the whole year. So we were in like every game. Those kids battled. We were not good. We didn't have a lot of skill. We had no size. Our school never had size. I don't know where all the size goes. East had size. I know East had size.
Yeah, went to East.
Yeah. So I remember that first year because, we played Green Bay East. They were stacked, 1 loss, first round of the playoffs, and we were up there and we were down 4 with like a minute to go. We were supposed to lose by 40. So that was the type of thing that sort of changed in our program in terms of there was an expectation of how there was an identity. So my last year we ended up going 500. First time since 1995-96. So that was a cool moment for the program in that, the FVA is really stinking hard. And and I'll talk about that and challenges in a little bit. But so that's one that we sort of turned the program around a little bit for the next guy. The other thing was we created an identity. Like when other schools in our conference, we got to the point where they knew what was walking into the gym. We were going to be strong. We were going to be tough. We weren't going to quit. We weren't going to give in. We had a lot of guys who were football players. We lifted. We were going to be physical, and they knew that that's something they were going to have to deal with. Before it was, it's Appleton North. It'll be fine. So to have an identity that the kids knew, that everybody knew who they were, that was a neat thing to see develop. And then the other one would just be, I mentioned my dad was a high school coach at 2 high schools when I was growing up. He was an assistant superintendent here in the Appleton schools when I was the head coach. And for 2 of those 5 years that I was the head coach, he was one of my assistants. Mm-hmm. So that was cool to get to coach with my dad and we talked all the time anyway. So for him to be able to be there and bounce ideas off of and be vocal and just be able to share some of those cool experiences with him as part of the family, the basketball family, was pretty neat.
I would piggyback off of that as far as the family thing. I've been lucky enough, like I said, I've coached all 3 of my kids. I don't know if they consider it lucky, but I've had the pleasure to coach my oldest. I coached my daughter, like I said, when she was a little student. Right now, our youngest is a sophomore, and I'm a varsity assistant, so I'll get to see him through as well. So that's been, to watch those 3 compete. I tell people all the time that's one of my greatest joys. To watch them compete is one of the funnest things, or most fun things that I get to do. Going back up with Coach Biebel said, as far as relationships, I greet at our church in Little Chute on Sundays, and to watch former players come through with their kids now and say, "Coach, how you doing, Coach?" That's pretty cool. It means I've been around a long time, but that's pretty cool as well. I really enjoy that, to see those kids grow into, like you said, young men, have families, be good citizens. Then as far as the other stuff, I've been blessed as far as to be part of when Brian Butch came through and that group of kids that we had. That experience was phenomenal, to watch all that and be part of that. And then in Little Chute, we had a team about 10 or so years ago that also made it to state. So going to state, every kid that plays the game, that's the goal, right? You want to get there. That's every kid will tell you that. And I've been a part of that, 2 different staffs. So I've been in that experience 4 times, and to me, there's not much better than that.
So I have 3 specific memories that I want to share. The first one is winning in regionals and going to the Brown County Arena to play. And so in 2000, it was my 5th year of coaching, and growing up in Little Chute, I had 3 hobbies always: as an adult, coaching basketball, playing basketball, and watching basketball. That's all I did. And so I'd go up to the Brown County Arena and watch sectionals, and that was awesome. But growing up, Little Shoe never made it. Then I got out of college and I started at Appleton West, and I was varsity assistant for a couple of years before North opened. Then North opened, I became the head coach, and we had 4 lean years. We went 1-20, 0-21, 1-20, 2-19. So after 4 years of coaching, I was 4-80 as a varsity coach. I always used to tell Ed Zepka, if there's a petition to have me fired, I'll sign it, because I really am not enjoying myself that much. It was really hard. But anyway, in my 5th year, we won regionals, went to the Brown County Arena. So it was a pretty awesome moment for us. The next one would be 2 years later, we went to state. And so, like Coach Knudsen said, so in many of those lean years, Shane was my assistant. We'd sit on the bench at the end of a game. We'd be down 40, 50, whatever it was. And Shane would always say, we're going from the outhouse to the penthouse. And I'd tell him, I think you're crazy. I don't think it's going to happen. But we ultimately, it was frustrating to have those challenges. But Paul Engen said to me, he said, basketball, you really need to find, Paul Engen's former football coach at West and North, and he said, you just really need to find 2 kids to hang your hat on. And in basketball, if you have 2 kids that push all the other kids to be better, you'll be better as a program. And those 2 kids showed up that year that we went that year. One was a freshman and one was a sophomore who transferred in, and they led us to the Brown County Arena. And then also they were on the team in 2002 that went to state. And then the final one, I do want to just share one. I could talk for days about Brian Butch's experience and the experience we had, but I'm just going to pick one memory. And it was kind of the day that college basketball came to Appleton. We needed to do an open gym, so in the summer, there's about a week period of time when college coaches can visit a player at their high school. And so I had a coach ask me, can you have an open gym so I can come and see Brian? And they didn't need to see him play. They already had offered a scholarship. And I think it was maybe Roy Williams, who's the coach of Kansas at the time. And Bo Ryan had told me, he said, don't ever let a coach be in your gym without me being there. And so that put me in a tough spot. But anyway, I organized an open gym, and a bunch of coaches all were saying, hey, we want to use up our final visit to see Brian. And so ultimately it was the coach at Kansas, Roy Williams, coach at North Carolina, coach at Tennessee, the Marquette coach, the Wisconsin coach, the head coach at Iowa, Steve Alford, and a coach from Stanford. They're all here at the open gym that we had. And it was a summer open gym, and I needed to get 10 kids to play. So I had to call freshmen, and they're all saying, I'm not playing in front of Roy Williams. They were nervous. They didn't want to do it. And so I did get 10 kids to play, and it was kind of funny. They all sat in folding chairs watching these 10 kids just kind of run up and down the court. And they were kind of joking. They knew who was all recruiting Brian because all of their university planes were out at the airport. Yeah. So the airport had the University of Tennessee plane and University of North Carolina plane. And so that's just one of hundreds of memories from that time. All right, next question is, what about challenges? Talk about 1 or 2 challenges. Maybe we'll start with Coach Knudsen. We'll work our way this way.
Actually, Coach Hunig and I were just talking about this. One of the biggest challenges now that I've been talking about is just at a smaller school, every sport wants their athlete to be doing something in the summer. And kids are getting spread pretty thin. It's a fine line of making sure they get better, but it's also a fine line making sure they can be a kid. I was saying my son, our sophomore, goes to bed before me. He goes to bed about 9:30 in the summer, which I think is pretty crazy. I mean, because they get up and they lift weights at 5:30. So, and then every night we have league twice a week. He likes to play football, so they have football as well during that time during the week. So it's lifting, it's football, it's basketball at night, it's basketball tournaments on the weekends. So one of the biggest challenges is trying not to burn the kids out. WI has a new rule this year that we can have unlimited contact with our kids starting June 1st, and it ends July 30th with the week of the 4th off. We can't have any contact with our kids during that time. For all the other time, we can practice and do as much as we want during that time. At a smaller school, when you're sharing athletes, that's tough. You don't want your kids to get burned out. So I think that's one of the bigger challenges, to make sure that our kids are in a good frame of mind, that they don't see it as a job. I don't want a kid showing up in the summer to play basketball saying, oh man, I got to play basketball today. If it's a job type atmosphere and you got to grind it out that way, I don't think that's good for our kids.
I hate to interrupt. Is it any sport or is it just basketball?
Any sport,
All.
any sport.
The only add-on to that is football still has that last week of July, as it's always been, that they can't have contact because then the practice starts the next week. So they have an extra week that they can't have contact. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
all sports.
Yep. So the challenge is trying to balance that, right? Because you try to keep up with the Joneses. Everybody else is doing stuff, right? So if you're not doing stuff, right, then you're worried that your kids are going to fall behind. Okay, so you got to make sure you're trying to keep up with everybody else to give your kids the opportunity. So I always tell the parents, we're going to give your kid opportunities, right? What they do with it, that's up to you and them. But we just want to give your son or daughter opportunities, right, to make themselves better. That's what we're trying to do. And then we try to pick things that we feel are more important. Say, can they at least make this, right? If they miss some of the other things, that's fine, but can they at least make this stuff? We feel this is important. We try to prioritize those things for the kids and the parents so they can make a decision. But I remember when my oldest played football, new football coach came in and said, he had a meeting with all the football parents and said, this is the week you should take family vacation. In the summer, and I thought, wait a second. You don't get to decide when I can take family vacation. But that was one of the challenges that we had, trying to figure out how we're going to do all this and keep our kids competitive, keep them involved without burning them out. And I think that's one of the bigger challenges right now.
I have two from my time. First of all, one of the biggest challenges. So I was hired as the head coach at North when I was 27. And I mentioned I was going to talk about the FVA. I mean, they're all Hall of Fame coaches. Like Dick Diener, Steve Randall, Lance Randall, Frank Shady, John Myron,
Coach
John
Parker.
Milkey. Coach Parker before when I was playing, Mike Shallow, who just retired. Like, sort of hard to out-coach a bunch of dudes who are in the Hall of Fame. So trying to get a program that wasn't successful and then have to battle against some of the great minds and coaches that we have in the whole state was a challenge. It was sort of me, Shane. It was me and Shane. And then everybody else is like in the Hall of Fame. We both started the same year, so that was that. And then just the players. I mean, amazing players that I'll talk about later. The second one is my biggest challenge for me was patience. I know Coach Parker talked about some, lack of tradition at East and wanting to turn it around, and obviously Coach Hartjes just mentioned his first 4 years. And I always wanted to turn it around, and I've been ready for this job, I thought, for 5 or 6 years, and having patience. I remember Coach Shallow, before a game once, we were talking, and he said, well, it's going to take you 5+ years. And I'm thinking, I don't want this to take 5+ years. I want this to take 2 years. Like, nobody wants to wait 5 years. I got juniors who want to have success. So that was hard, and I was young, and I was, foolish in a lot of ways, and I wanted things, to turn around quicker. Coach Myron, my last year was Coach Myron's last year at Kimberly, and we were talking at the All-Star game, and he looked at me. We were talking because he had just finished at Kimberly, and his wasn't by choice, mine was by choice, and he looked at me and goes, what are you doing quitting? What are you doing? I said, well, he goes, that was the best year you did coaching. And I thought that was pretty neat of Coach Myron to say that. But we had just had our second child right before the basketball season started, and that was the main reason that I had stepped down at that point. But so like that patience, so that sort of fit the Shallow, because I coached for 5 years, and Coach Shallow says it's going to take you 5 years, and then to have someone like Coach Myron say that was your best team, that was the best job you did with a group of young men, was sort of felt like I could walk out and say, okay, we set it up for the next guy to have some success.
So challenges, I think number one, try to realize that it's not about you, and there's only so much you can control, and not personalizing things. People joke because I lived in Kimberly. If we lost, I walked home from Xavier to Kimberly. If it was 40 degrees below zero, I was walking, because I lost it. I lost the game, and I was always a believer that players win, coaches lose. And when we lost, that was a long walk home. And I would tell my wife I'll be home in about an hour and a half. And I would walk out that door. I hate to say this, I'd buy a pack of Marlboro, and I would chain smoke them all the way home. Okay? I quit for about 3 years once, and we lost to Fox Valley, and I went and bought a pack and walked the way home on it. And that, just personalizing that, I think that. I think the other biggest challenge that I always felt was cutting kids. Oh my gosh. I got to be honest, right? There's things that haunt me to this day. Having to look a kid in the eye and tell them, you're not good enough. Okay? And see the pain and anguish and the time that they spend at something. It's a killer. It really is. I think that to me is the day that I regret it the most. Kids want to play. Kids wanted to be a part of it. And that's a positive. But not realizing sometimes how it meant to a kid. Because you were like, he doesn't really care. Yeah, he did. And I think that was very difficult. I think the other thing is realizing that you're not a coach. You're really running a program. And it's not just the varsity. You have to develop everybody. And you have to take responsibility for all your coaches. You're responsible for mentoring those coaches. You're responsible for making them better communicators. You want to make them be coaches in the future. And taking that time and letting them grow on their own, but still at the same time overseeing that whole thing. I think that was always a challenge. I would tell my freshman coach, you run this, and that's all you do. Okay, we play half-court defense. If we're losing by 1 with 5 seconds to go, you're staying on that end of the court. You're not pressing. You lost. Because if you can't win playing half-court D, it's not worth it. So, because I always believed in progressions. Okay, there's learning progressions. Too many coaches want to teach calculus when kids can't even do arithmetic. Focus on 2 things. Progressions. Progressions will win. When you become a varsity coach, if you have to reteach, you're in trouble. Okay? It's you don't go into a classroom and do remedial stuff. Okay? It's a progression. And you have to live with that. You have to live with losing at levels to teach kids things. And I think that was always a big challenge, because you wanted to win, but the progressions was more important. And lastly, I think is just finding, okay, I'm a flow guy, okay? Your life should be flow, and basketball and sports should be flow. So there's a continuum. There's skills and there's challenges. It's like teaching, okay? And if the challenges you have are less than the skills kids have, they're bored and they're struggling. They're misbehaving. If you challenge them too much, they're anxious and they're frustrated. So finding that line, and not only finding it with one guy, but finding it with 15 people. Okay, and the same with like classroom teachers. You have to find that flow. How do you deal with that everybody's there? So how do you organize group work? How do you organize practice to make sure that there's a good flow and that kids can walk out of practice being happy, okay, and saying this was fun, okay, and I enjoyed it. Time went by fast. If kids are looking at the clock and saying, oh, how much time do we have left? They're not in that flow, and they're not going to be as good. So peak performance is all based on that challenge skill continuum and trying to keep it at that level.
Put me in, coach. I don't know where we're transferring here to.
Challenges. 1 or 2 challenges.
Well, again, I kind of alluded to it before. I think the big thing is that kids progress from year to year. And I coach here at East 24 years. We only won 1 JV championship in 24 years. And only brought 7 kids up to the varsity for the totality. So it was kind of a progressional type of thing. You know, we did have kind of a over thing. We were kind of big kids. I had a series of 13 years where every kid 6'4" or taller was in the top 8 as a senior. But it took them a while to get there a lot of times, and they didn't have much else going for them. You know, it might be a little awkward and things like that. If anything, we lacked a little quickness. But, you know, so that was basically it, of just progressing from one stage to another. And they had enough belief that, yeah, it's going to work. We've seen it work. It's going to work, Coach. And for the most part, it did. You know, you had a few glitches in there. And things did change over the years. It used to be an 8-team league when I started. And it was a big deal in the Post Crescent. Every Saturday morning, Bob Lloyd would interview you and things like this. And you knew, I loved it when you had a Monday through Thursday practice in the game. And then it got to be fragmented. When are you playing? Oh, we're playing Thursday. We're playing Saturday, all over the place, you know. But it used to be a Friday night fish fry, go to the game. And that's when it was fun. And we were guaranteed packed houses against Kimberly, Appleton West, Nina. I mean, they were guaranteed. It was going to be a packed house for all those games. And it was a lot of fun. So it kind of lost a little bit of its aura, I thought, as the years went on, relative to, you know, everybody get fired up at tournament time, but not maybe so much during the year on that. So it did change, and I was a practice guy. I loved practice, absolutely loved it. And there's never a practice in my life that I wasn't sad that it ended, because I think that's where you get better, and that's what I enjoyed the most. And the kids, they put it on the line. They had no problem, you know. It wasn't really a motivational type thing. They hung in there, and they knew it was going to work sooner or later. And so there's a lot of gratification in that. And the sad part about basketball is the worst day of the year is when you can't go back and practice because you lost your last game. Everybody loses the last game till you win a state championship, which we did not. We got a couple seconds, but did not. So that was us, just takes it right out of you. But you give it your all, and it was very gratifying over the years and whatnot. And I'll say one thing that caught me off guard. Mark Miller, I don't know if he still does it. He used to win that basketball yearbook.
Yeah, he still does.
Yeah.
Still does.
I remember he said something to me. He says, he come up and he shook my hand. He says, what? He says, you're the only schools, I could say probably Appleton West too, that was before, that gets along with the parochial teams in there.
We always got along.
Yeah, I always got along. Mike Heidemann right too. He says everybody else, he says they hate each other. I said, what? It wasn't even an effort, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I remember one time we lost to Milwaukee, Washington in the state finals, and Bob was playing him in the Christmas tournament the next year.
Yeah.
Called me up. I said, sure, I'll give you a tape. We didn't think anything about it. Right. You know what I mean? And like that, we respected each other and just kind of, the cards so good back then, where they were. So that's all I got.
All right, so, I think about challenges. I think about the fact that as a high school basketball coach, your success, your happiness, your joy is dependent on teenage boys. And that is not always a good thing, because they don't always make the best choices. And so you're trying to balance what Coach Knutson is talking about. You're pushing kids to get better, to work hard in the off season, but you don't want to push them too hard because you don't want them in the gym every day, all day long. So you're trying to balance them just being kids. And you're dealing with sometimes one year our starting point guard sprained his knee because he was playing soccer in a Saturday afternoon tournament or league or something like that. Missed a bunch of games. And so you're dealing with 15, 16, 17-year-old boys. And that can be a challenge sometime, because I was one of those at one time, and then I had 2 sons. And so anyway, just trying to figure out how hard can you push, knowing that it is just high school basketball, but you really do want to win, you want to enjoy it, you want to have success, and that's dependent on the kids that play for you. So, all right, we'll start here and we'll work that way, see if you're okay with this. What's your best team that you coached?
The best team, I guess you'd have to say the ones that got furthest in the tournament. I would say 2 of them. The one that might be the most memorable was 1980-16. It was Ross Van Handel, Rick Hansen, and Zaleski, and these kids, because we were struggling to be 500 all year. And we eventually got there at the end. We were losing close games. And there's always something like, if you lose a game by 3 points, you read in the paper, our kids are winners, that's why we beat them, and this and that. And if you lose by 3, you think everything's wrong. Well, it's really not that way. It's just a couple missed free throws, a couple missed rebounds. That's all it is. One basket. And we were losing a lot of close games, but we were getting there. I knew we were getting there. It just that our record didn't show it. And I can remember Rick Hansen's father came up and he said, well, if you could win just one game in a regional, we've had a good year. Well, we won the regional, and we beat Kimberly in the finals, and they'd beaten us twice during the year. And then Southwest had handled us quite handily early in the season. I was one of the best teams in Green Bay, and we beat them by about 10 points in the sectional final up there. And so all of a sudden we're going to the state tournament. And everybody's, oh, Shaka, way to go, you know, just kind of show up. And the first year we went there, we'd won the conference championship 4 years previous. And it was just a novelty. I mean, right before the game, somebody's delivering me a corsage and all this, and we kind of went out and played that way that year. And I said, this can't happen again. I remember we stopped for breakfast in Beaver Dam, and Rick Hansen took his hat out and said, everybody put their little way to go east things in the little hat, and we'll get them back when we're done. And we went there in the first game, and we were a team that didn't shoot the ball very well, but we could do everything else real well. The most points we gave up during the state tournament starting as a regional was 47 points, and that was in the state finals. We had to foul it in. We were playing a team that was averaging 82 points a game, and we held them to 39 in the first game and beat them right at the end. And then we're playing Lacrosse Central, and I thought we could beat them. Our kids thought we could beat them. You know, I guess everybody else didn't, and we did. We beat them by 10, 12 points. And so next thing you know, we're playing in the state finals, and we go back to the Concourse Hotel. We have no place to stay because everybody thought we were going to lose. They checked us out of the hotel. I had no money. Lucky that my dad carried a little bit with him, and so I had to take the kids out. I called them, but luckily Lacrosse Central was so mad they lost. They give us their rooms, so we had a place to stay before we were playing Sheboygan North in the state championship. That was with two first-team All-Staters, Portman and Rudolph. He went to the University of Wisconsin, and we lost. We battled him. I think it was 7-9 points. That team scored 47 against us. So that was definitely a memorable year. The other one would be Danny Allen, Mick Stager, and Eastman, and all those kids. And that was a legitimately good team. I mean, we were good all season long. And our closest game to the state finals once we started regional play was an 11-point win. And we were good. We were really good. And we got a little foul trouble and this and that, and ended up losing. We were up at halftime. But, you know, it was okay. I mean, the aftermath kind of burned me because there wasn't one kid from Milwaukee, Washington that lived in the Milwaukee, Washington school district. They're all cabbed in like an all-star team. But we were good. That was probably the best team we ever had, that we could play from start to finish and be very good at both ends of the floor. So that's it.
So I'll take the political thing. I coached 10 years. They were all best in their own way. In terms of wins, losses, you know, we won the state championship in 1995, and Jim Zuliger, he was a member of that team. He's here. Was not our best year. We got hot at the end and won. I was probably the worst coach that there was. And you can ask Jim, we lost our last game of the season. We had regionals coming up. I went in the coach's office. I put the balls in the gym. I said, coach yourself. And I sat in the coach's office for 3 days, okay? And then nobody came close to us. Zoo kind of took over and said, hey, it's time to play. And nobody came close, and we won every game. We were winning by 25 in the state championship. It was crazy. Probably the next year, 96, we probably had our most talented team. We were big. And we lost the state championship game to Milwaukee Pius, who had a kid, Michael Kelly, who played at the Badgers on their Final Four team. Very good player. They were tough. Our best inside kid got hurt in the semifinals, so they played a 1-3-1. We were stuck shooting threes. I think we set the state record for making threes, but we went 0 for 0 from the free throw line that game, and ended up losing by about 8 or 9. So that was a great team. But otherwise, each of them had their own uniqueness. You know, we had some teams where in '94 we had nobody over 6'1" because we had a 6'9" kid who fractured his skull, went up for a dunk, fell down and cracked his skull in his back, was out for the year. So we started nobody over 6'2", and we were just tough. Okay, and we had fun. It was probably the most fun we had because kids just went after it and just played. It was like just noon ball. Guys went after it, and we loved it. So I'll stop there.
Yeah. That was a good answer about every team.
Yeah, every team has their best.
in their own way.
Yep.
I probably have. I mean, I wasn't a head coach for a tremendously long time, but after the year after we won one game, that next group was probably my best team in terms of basketball players, and then my last year was probably my best like team in terms of athleticism, and they were close. Both teams were 500 or around 500. But my best players were in that second year. One of them, he went to North first 2 years, and then his parents his mom got a job in Nebraska, which is where his parents were from. And he went down and played at a really good school in Nebraska. And senior year, I don't even know if this would happen in the WIA anymore, but he came back as a senior to graduate at North and he lived with friends. He didn't even live with family or something. He lived with his parents at one of his friends who was also a senior. And the WIA approved it and allowed him to be eligible. And he was our best player, his first team All-FBA. He's currently an assistant coach for Appleton North for the men's program. So Brandon Backman coming back he's the best player that I coached. Just did everything. He was just natural. And then I had a point guard who could fill it, and had great role players around there. Those were my favorite role players. I had 7th and 8th guys who didn't care how much they played. They were seniors. They were great leaders. So that team was a special team. And we felt like we could make some noise. In the playoffs, we hosted a regional game. We had Appleton East beat, and I still remember it. I know where I was standing. They missed a free throw with a second and a half left in regulation. They tried to miss on purpose because they were down 3. They chucked a 3. They chucked a 3, got the rebound. Chucked another 3, got the rebound. Rebound's coming towards Coach Milkey in the East bench. And Kyle Mosing takes the ball, falls into the bench, and chucks it off the glass in to send it to overtime. I don't know if he took out Coach Milkey or not, but and we were calm. Everything was calm. We went overtime. We had the lead in overtime. Nobody's brought up officials yet, but there was my best player somehow airballed a 5-footer by 6 feet. It's pretty impressive. So no foul was called and we didn't get the ball. But we ended up losing in overtime. So that was really tough. I mean, Coach Parker talked about, you lose your last, only 4 teams in the state are happy at the end of the year. That was tough. Having to walk into those locker rooms at the end of the year where you feel like that was a year where you could make some noise and you really didn't want it to end with that group, and then it was over, and young men in tears, and those are tough. And you talked about golfing with your former players, and a lot of our guys, they all have families and they have young children, and they're at Reed and playing in a booster club, and they're still supportive of Appleton North, and some of them are still coaching, and that's what's cool, to see those young men turn into wonderful family men and who want to continue to give back. And that I guess tells you that somewhere along the line they had positive coaches that left an impact on them, that's something that they wanted to continue to do. So that's pretty special.
That's an interesting thing. If you don't, all of us, right? Details vary. My wife will ask me all the time, how can you remember? You can't remember this. But you can remember. I mean, we all can remember. We've all got, especially the losses. We all remember the losses. So that unfortunately never goes away. That's part of the coaching gig. Teams, as far as in my career, my kids' teams. Obviously, again, I've been fortunate enough to coach all my kids, which has been very special. But 2 other teams that kind of stick out for me. One, the year after Brian Butch and David Buchanan and Nick Hansen. We had some. I mean, Brian was really good. Don't get me wrong, but we had some really good kids on that team. The year after those guys graduated, Greg had stepped down, and I took over. I was like, we lost a ton, right? We didn't have a lot of kids with a lot of experience. I had one kid that had played quite a bit for Greg the year before. That was our best player. Started 0-7, and then we kind of figured it out.
Then you must have played us.
And then we 0-7, and we went 7-7 down the stretch, and started playing some good basketball. We kind of figured some things out, like I wanted, but I was trying to get across to them. They were starting to understand. I enjoyed that. We had a big win in Fond du Lac at the time. I remember the first person I called was Coach Hartjes. I was ecstatic. Like that was, you can tell like when you're starting to make progress with kids. That was a win for us that we were starting to make progress. So I was very happy getting on. I didn't have a cell phone. I can't remember how he called you. I think he was one of the kids. I didn't have one at the time. So that team stands out to me. And then when I coached the girls, my daughter was a junior. We had a really good team that year. And I always said, I talked to Coach Hartjes about this, we had the Brian Butch of girls basketball. We had a girl by the name of Hannah Vandenberg, 6'2", went to Marquette on a scholarship to play volleyball. Oh, fantastic volleyball player, but she was just as good at basketball. So I used the blueprint that we had used with Brian as far as defensively and keeping Hannah in the lane. And that team was really, really good. We weren't very deep. Unfortunately, like we all run into, our area is very good. Teams all over the place, and we have to face each other all the time when it gets to the tournament. So that year, Freedom and Ricetown were very good. They were both ranked. We were not ranked at the time, but we took third in the conference, and we met Freedom in the regional championship, and we got beat by 3. We had the ball with, I'll remember this, we had the ball with 7 seconds left. Ran a play, but like we could never throw the ball high enough to get it to Hannah. We didn't get it to Hannah again. We always thought it was going to be too high, and Hannah could jump. I told the girls all the time, I haven't seen us throw the ball over Hannah's hands yet. Throw it as high as you possibly can. Let Hannah go get it. We didn't anyway. We lost that. But that team, we won the night before in the regional semifinal, and they all went out and they bought goldfish, and they brought them to my house. So my daughter said, "Yeah, my dad won't mind." So they all show up at I'm watching film for the next day, and it's 11 o'clock at night, and they all come knocking at the door, or my daughter just lets them in, and they all had goldfish. They bought 4 or 5 goldfish. Coach, these are for you. And they named them after the Chicago Bulls. I was a big Chicago Bulls fan, Jordan, Pippen, Rodman, the whole group. So those things live forever too. I was surprised. I thought they would, usually you're thinking it's going to be just a week or two. I think it was 2 or 3 years we had those things. So that team sticks out as well.
So I'll finish up this question, then we'll just do one more question, then we'll take whatever questions you have. So I would say our 2002 team with Brian Butch's junior year, we lost in the state quarterfinals, and we lost on a last-second shot by Michael Flowers, who played for the Badgers. And the reason he got that last-second shot off is one of our guys was out of position. So anytime I see that young man, I love him, but I think if you're in the right spot defensively, you ain't got that shot off. But nonetheless, we lost that. But that team had a lot of depth. That was a better team than Brian's senior year. Brian's senior year, we lost in the state championship to Milwaukee Rufus King. We actually lost to them in a holiday tournament, and then we lost to them in the state championship. They were number 1 the entire season. We were number 2 the entire season. Brian got in foul trouble. I would have liked our chances if he was in foul trouble. But the other thing about that senior year of Brian's, we didn't have good depth. And one of the things that was really disappointing, and I see this still to this day with high school boys, they give up on themselves too easily. A lot of boys develop and grow later. Ron, you talked about when they're seniors, that's a whole lot different when they're sophomores. I see so many kids that after their sophomore year, they aren't getting playing time, they'll give up on themselves and they'll stop playing. So Brian's group, when they were sophomores, had a really great team. They played for Coach Knutson, maybe won the conference championship as JVs, but a bunch of them didn't go out their junior year because they weren't going to get any playing time. And had some of those guys gone out their senior year, they would have been a top 8 player on our team that maybe wins a state championship. And so I think about that all the time, is that boys just have to hang in there until they grow because they develop later. But anyway, that team is the 2002 for me. Let's do this one. I don't want to make you answer who's your best player. So how about the best player you've ever coached against? So let's start with Coach Knutson and work our way back this way.
I would say Oshkosh West had some really good players when I was coaching, and there was a kid by the name of Tim Jarmusch. They had been playing for the Badgers. Tim was like 6'6", 6'7", and did a little bit of everything at the time, which was, could handle like a guard, which at the time wasn't that was starting to change as far as in basketball, but that was not necessarily the case earlier in basketball around the area. 6'7" kids were supposed to stay in the lane and not come out of it, but he could handle it. He could shoot 3-pointer. I mean, they played some zone and they put him up at the top and trap, and he was a lot to handle. So I would say Tim Jarmusch from Oshkosh West.
Yeah, so we got some questions ahead of time, and so I have some notes on my phone, and I put Oshkosh West, easily the best team, and they had that was Coach Randall Lance had to take over he decided to take over the program after his dad died during a surgery, and his dad actually was a head coach against my dad in the 70s in like the Platteville area. So I knew it was very neat to be able to coach against the elder Coach Randall. But when Lance took over, they lost, 2 games in 4 years or something, or some ridiculous number, and their starting lineup was taller than the Badgers. Their point guard was 6'2", Langenfeld. He ended up going to Platteville, and then everybody else was 6'6" or taller in their starting lineup. So they were just stacked beyond belief. So I'm going with a little different wild card because he was the purest scorer that we played against. And he played at Fond du Lac. His name was Eddie Gilgenbach, he was almost impossible because he would he would like Mickey Crow. He would, from 2 steps inside of the half-court line, he was deadly. I mean, it was going in. And he scored, his senior year, I think he scored over 40 both times against us. And we beat him once, lost to him down there. But he was such a difficult matchup because he had the freedom, he was athletic, he had a little bit of size to him in terms of height. He might have been 6'1" or something like that. And he didn't go off to play. He played like D3, like at Lakeland or something. Or Marion, I don't know, wherever. I mean, he didn't go to Wisconsin. He didn't go to Loyola like another Oshkosh West kid went. Andy Polka, who was just a brick wall. But Eddie Gilgenbach could fill it. And we had real problems trying to control him. So I think he was the best player that we had to try to deal with.
So I was looking at the question, I was like, best player. So probably, going back, there were 4 guys who played in the NBA that I was head coached against. So those are easy names. So I'm going to go a completely different route because the 3 guys who I think were the toughest guys to play against, number 1 was a guy named John Martinez, played point guard for Milwaukee Marquette. He completely destroyed us offensively. We could not enter the ball. We could not get the ball past half court. A number of years later, we had the same problem with a kid named Ben Johnson who played at Green Bay. Mm-hmm. He was tough. We could not enter the ball. If you could score 25 points, it didn't matter. We couldn't score. We couldn't even get the ball entered. Those 2 guys were that tough. And then the 3rd one would have been Michael Kelly from Pius. Not a great scorer, but just so tough defensively. Those guys made a bigger impact in the game than any guys who's, Nick Van Exel, okay, blah, 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 okay. He could score. These guys dominated the game. They changed the game on how it was, Tim McElvain, he's 7 foot, played at Marquette, played in the NBA for a while. They were big, but they didn't dominate the game. Those point guards, and I'm a big point guard guy, I would tell our point guards every year, if we win, it's because of you. If we lose, it's because of you. Because you start everything, okay? And if you do a poor job of that, we're going to lose, okay? You're the difference maker. So those are my 3.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out which Nina player I'm going to pick. Probably Krecklow and some of these guys over there, but they're pretty tough to stop. They were good pretty much every year. But it's funny you're talking about the defense, how it changes the game. Allude back to that good team we had with Ross Van Halen, the guys that finished second in the state. And there was honestly, we had a better chance to get the ball on the side out of bounds than the team that was inbounding it. We worked hard on it, some things like that. That would change the whole momentum of the game for us. And I look at the way the NCAA tournament was this year. If Duke could have inbounded the ball, they'd win national champs.
Yes.
I look at Houston when they got beat by Kansas.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't inbound the ball, and it changed the whole game. And we were good at things that people didn't notice that year. But I just saw it. Well, there it is again and again. More so this year, I thought, than ever. I think there's going to be some unique ways, like where they put 4 guys on the end zone and come in to get it in. It's a big deal. It really is on that. So, so probably we played against a lot of seconders in the league then from Oshkosh North and things like that. And they were all great players. I can't really single out one. I mean, Neenah had an abundance of guys each year, I guess.
Exactly.
I think it's kind of interesting, the cyclical nature of talent in a basketball in a school. And so for the longest time, Ron had all the big kids at Appleton. They're all East Side kids, right? The Maters, the Grabners, Allen, Hornsets. North had one in 30 years now, they've had one. And West had none. Yeah. And then West had a string of 4 big guys that ended up playing Division II or Division I basketball. So it's interesting, but going back to, you guys talked about Oshkosh West, they were not very good for a long time. Then they had a run of about 10 years where they had all kinds of great players. And so the best player I've ever coached against is Adrian Tigert. Adrian Tigert walked in as a 9th grader and was 6'6", 220, led the conference in scoring and rebounding. And we're like, we got to play him for 4 years now. We have to play him for 3 more years. And so he's the same age as Travis Diener. And Travis Diener, great point guard, played in the NBA, but I felt Adrian Tigert controlled the game defensively, offensively, and we'd scout him, and then we'd work on how we're going to double team him one game. And that game, he didn't come inside the 3-point line. He just shot threes the whole game. He just made them all. Then the next game, he'd go inside, but he wouldn't shoot it all. He'd wait for the double team, then he'd kick it to the open guy. He just could dominate the game in a lot of different ways. And so, I don't want to say I'm the opposite as you, Bob. I like big guys. Give me big guys any day. You like point guards, but I want big guys. All right, so it is.
Okay, one other thing, nobody mentioned Brian Butch. I was smart enough to retire when he was a freshman, so nobody else coached against him. So.
I was JV, so it didn't count. I was JV coach.
So that's why his name didn't show up. Okay.
All right, Claudine, it is 7 o'clock, so we open it up for questions now. All right, so we'll open it up for questions. I'll start right here in the lake.
I have a question and a comment, and it comes from the standpoint of grandmother watching grandkids currently and in the past few years. One is kind of goes with what you're saying. Those teams can be down 30, 40 points, either our team or the other team, and they only have 2 minutes to play, and they play as if they could still win. And it always amazes me how they scrap so hard they don't quit. And it just, I give them credit for that, whether it's my team or the other team. And the other is more from the standpoint of a Xavier kid back in the 60s, watching the teams play with whatever limited sport knowledge I had at the time. And I watched these 6th, 7th, 8th grade, even 9th grader through the summer now, and I said to somebody next to me, I think if you could take the Xavier teams I watched then and put them here, I think the kids now have more skills and they're more advanced, and I just want to know whether that's true or not.
I'm a believer that they have more skills. No question. Fundamentally, there's some things that they may not have, but overall skills, they're much better. So, one of my Jim Zuliger, his son he's played at Xavier. We go back and forth, and he sends me video clips because we're like, hey, what? Because I'm like, this way they're playing now, and he's like, no, watch this. Watch how they space. And they're teaching me, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is pretty interesting. And kind of thinking back, well, how would I coach against this now? And how they play, but definitely there's more skills and they can shoot the ball a lot better than the kids that I had back in the day, for sure.
Yeah, there's more resources now.
Yes.
Right? I mean, everybody's got, Ryan Borowitz has something, Brian Bush does camps. I mean, there's stuff all over the place. You can have people take their kids all over to get training or skills, or there wasn't a lot of that when I first started, there wasn't a ton of that stuff going on. But now it's everywhere, and it's every day of the week if you want it, right? You can take your kids somewhere to get better, work on something. And now with the new rule with the coaching, right? We have skill sessions for our kids. We can bring them in a couple of times during the week, and we do skill sessions for an hour. We can work on shooting. We can work on ball handling. We can work on, right? So I do agree. The kids are more skilled now because I think they have more opportunities. And the second thing I wanted to say, talking about the kids playing so hard, I think all of us would agree. The greatest compliment I can get as a coach is when people come and say, "Your kids play hard." That's the greatest compliment we can get. Your kids play hard, because that's what we try to instill, right? Like no matter what the score, no matter what it is, you play hard to the end. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we try to do.
Okay. And you said AAU?
Yeah, so the opportunities for kids to play basketball now
Yeah.
are so immense.
Yeah.
So I think back to when I was in 6th grade, my brother was in 7th grade, my parents finally let us take the Valley Transit bus from Little Chute to Appleton. It dropped off right in front of the Burger King on College Avenue. We walked to the YMCA on Saturday afternoon to play basketball, or Saturday morning. That was the only basketball we could find. So you played in your driveway, you maybe played at the park, but there was no opportunities to play 5-on-5. And so now kids can be playing, sometimes they probably play too much
Yeah.
and don't spend enough time in their driveway shooting. But anyway, their skill is so much better. And I think that's why we see so many 9th graders who come into high school ready to contribute on a varsity team, because they've already played so much basketball by the time they got to 9th grade, whereas 30 years ago there wasn't those opportunities. When I coached at West, we started the youth basketball program, and so that was about like 1998. And prior to that, if you're a kid, you played on your school team, and you probably played at the YMCA, and you started at the Park and Rec maybe, but now kids can play every day. They can find someplace to play.
Yeah, that's the one thing I'm a little negative about some of the AAU stuff and things like that. What games basically prove to you, they prove to you what you can do and what you can't do. But you gotta work on what you can't do is to make them better. And a lot of kids just wanna play games, and repeat the same things, doing the same things wrong. And that's huge. And you can win at different things at different levels. When you're in 7th grade, I'll take the quick team every single time. And there's a lot of big kids sitting on the bench, never get a chance. They're gone. They're in the hallways. I think some of my kids have turned out to be great players when they never got a chance to play now, so to speak, because the coaches want to win at every level. As much as you talk to them, they want to. And you're these big awkward kids, they're not going to help you win at that level. They'll help you win later on, but they got to hang in there. And a lot of them are walking the hallways, never knew they could have been a good player. I look at this kid, Dave Wiegert. I brought him up, one of the best, probably 10, 12 players I ever coached. In my 8th grade camp, I rated him 31 out of 32. And all of a sudden, he's one of the 10 best, but it took him that long to progress. He would have been gone other places. I look at like a extreme example, Frank Kaminsky at the University of Wisconsin. He's Player of the Year. Okay, when they recruited him, they wanted this 6'10" kid that ended up going to Illinois. And he said, "Okay, we'll take you. We'll redshirt you." He scores 1.5 points when he's eligible his freshman year, and here he's National Player of the Year his senior year. If he goes to Kentucky, he doesn't even sit on the bench. You know what I mean? So they're there. You just got to figure out how to find them and keep them going, confident. So I kind of think sometimes it works against some people when they start playing so many games younger, because the big kids wash off by the sideline. I really feel it.
I think also from an age perspective, like when I graduated in '93, and Coach Parker and Coach Biebel can probably talk about this a little bit more. Like there was maybe one AAU team out of Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
It was the D1 kids that
You used to go down and play
Yeah.
with what's his name? It's Sheboygan North ran stuff down at UW in Milwaukee. Dessenthal. Dessenthal would have all his games down at Milwaukee, and all the kids would go down there and play on Saturday.
And so it was like
Yeah.
AAU meant you were elite.
Yeah.
And now I could start an AAU team right now if I wanted to.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. It gives opportunities for kids if you have the right reasoning that you're doing it. But there are so many there's so many kids and families who now think, well, my kid's been playing AAU since 4th grade. Why isn't he on varsity? Well, there's 74 AAU teams in the Fox Cities. Like anybody can, you can find an AAU team. And I overheard a question, what is AAU? So AAU is like, it's travel basketball organized travel basketball. There's a number of groups out of the Fox cities, and you can stay local. You can stay in like the Milwaukee or like the Champion Center has different tournaments, or you can end up in Indiana or Las Vegas or
They
all
love
over the place.
They love parents' credit cards.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh yeah, it's
trust me,
national.
They love your credit card. You're swiping it all the time.
And for the elite kids, they go to Vegas because
Yes.
they're looking for scholarships. They're
Yes.
looking for Division I, Division II. They're trying to help pay for college. And there's a lot of college coaches at those. But for a lot of the kids that are in our area, they're not going to play college basketball. But there's this misconception that, well, if I pay that $3,000 to play basketball, that's going to help then the head coach is going to notice, and that's going to help my son or my daughter. And it doesn't, it doesn't when they walk in, So there's some good and some bad to it. I love the opportunity if it's done the right way, and people have the right perspective of why they're doing it. Then it can be really good for the kid.
John, you had a question?
What coach do each of you respect the most, or gave you headaches, drove you nuts? I guess that's the question, is who that you coached against?
So mine is the same person to drove you nuts and it was drive you nuts and respected.
Yeah, who did you respect the most?
Drove me nuts and respected. Was probably Frank Shady at Oshkosh North. Talk about having a program where you knew what you were going to face when you got off the bus. You were going to face a guy who wore his sweater up to here. He had his sweater up at his arms, and he didn't have to do much because everybody at Oshkosh North program knew exactly what they were required to do to be on the floor. They were going to play the 1-3-1. He was going to have someone 6'5" at the top. It was going to be really difficult to move the ball, and they were going to get after it, and they were going to try to beat you to every loose ball, and they were going to make it 32 minutes of just pulling your hair out until you just sort of can't do it anymore. And it was every time. It was every time. And we got them once at their place. And it was almost like we won the state title. Like we beat Coach Shady at Oshkosh North. It was like you don't walk in Oshkosh North and walk out with a win. But having to try to get ready for that and just how hard they all played for each other and for their coach was, I respected that a lot.
Any others want to answer that?
I would say for me was Bob Lech at Racine St. Catherine. We usually open every year. I always like the idea of kids from Appleton having to go down to Racine to play. Okay, just the bus ride into St. Catherine's was a eye-opening experience for our freshmen, and we'd have to beat St. Catherine in the state tournament, so we needed to get our kids from freshman year, sophomore year, junior year to be able to play city basketball in order to win the state championship. And so Bob would press us the whole game, and we go back and forth, but I love Bob to this day. He was a great guy and great coach.
I'd say Ron Anderson. I tell you, he did one thing. I was used to be the youngest guy, then I eventually got to be the oldest guy in the league. But he said he also had a parent meeting at the end after he cut the team down and whatnot. And I started to do that, and it was real good. And it wasn't a Siskumba meeting or anything like that. I said, hey, look, I can only play so many guys. We're going to work hard and this and that. And if you have a problem where you don't understand something, you ask your son. And if your son doesn't have an answer, that's because he hasn't asked me. And that's where it kind of stopped. And I only had 31 years of coaching. I only had 7 derogatory phone calls or letters, that time. And I think it was basically because it stopped right there. You know what I mean? They did. I'm sure some people had their pen in their hand and things like that. It was mostly playing time. But I respected that. I thought Coach Anderson raised the level of the league because he was pretty much going to state tournament every year. And boy, you better get your act together if you want to get on board there. And I used to look forward to that game at Nina more than any other game all year. I loved it. I mean, because it was such an intimidating atmosphere, and to be able think he could take them down and so forth. It was great. It really was. It was a lot of fun. So.
And I would second what Ron said. So, we had a parent meeting and I had a 50, 60 page handbook. This is your parents. This is for your parents. You read it, you sign it, okay? These are the rules, okay? This is what you talk to me. I would be very clear about this is how I determine playing time. This is the best 5 players aren't going to start, okay? This is what I'm looking for. I need this, and that's how it is. So it was pretty clear, and same thing, I don't coach you, I coach your son. So if your son hasn't come to me, okay, we don't have a problem. That's, yeah.
I think you're kind of alluding to the question I had, which was, you can only play so many players, and I don't know how deep the bench can be. But what do you do in the beginning of the year when you have all these kids trying out? How do you choose who's going to make the team? I mean, is it all just skill?
For me, it was always balance. Okay, who do I need? What do I need? I can't have 10 point guards. Who fits in? And sometimes it comes down to what year are you in school. You can't keep 12 seniors, okay, because that's going to kill you your junior year. So you may have to cut a kid that's a senior because I got a junior that I'm going to need to develop, and those are where it gets hard. Who's there? And to be honest, who do I want to be my last 5 guys? Because they're not going to play. So are they going to be the person who brings you down, or are they going to be able to handle this and make you better? Because they're not going to play. And they have to accept that fact. And you can tell some kids with skills that may not play, they're going to be a detriment to your team, emotionally and with that. So you're looking for team chemistry and that type of thing. So I think that matters.
It's a little easier now because kids start so young. You see kids, right? Sometimes from second grade on, you'll have an idea. Summer's always a good time to evaluate. You might not have everything in place, but you have a good idea after the summer who can do what. So that helps when the season rolls around. You have a good idea. What we like to do, what I did as a head coach as well, we'll have conferences with each kid before the season starts. This is where we see you. This is where we think you're going to help us. Doesn't mean that can't change during the course of the year, but this is where you're at right now. And in that way, everybody knows going in. This is what the plan for everybody is going in. And then, like we said, not that it can't change, and it may change during the year. Things happen, kids get injured, kids get better. So it might change, but that way at least everybody knows going in kind of what the role is.
The other thing I would say is, from a freshman level, I would bring in generally 2 people who were outside of our program. And I let them evaluate too. Because people have different eyes. And I can fall in love with something that somebody else sees some beauty in. Okay? And we have to challenge ourselves as coaches to say, we don't know everything. Okay? So what am I missing here? And some people see that different. God gave us different eyes to see different things. And some people see beauty in that. So having that discussion is healthy. Okay? Because I love this. Okay? Who plays? And my philosophy is always this. This is what I value. Does your son value that? Because that's who's going to play.
Right, and people say, "Well, a coach plays favorites," and I came back to North and coached a year. The varsity coach asked me to coach, and my oldest son was a freshman, and I said yes. My son was not very good, but I said if that was the case, and he didn't play a lot. I mean, there were games he didn't play. He was a freshman. I mean, it's high school. We're gone to, this isn't middle school. There aren't rules. Not everybody has to play. And I told the kids that. I said, listen, there's no playing favorites. If I was playing favorites, sorry everybody, but my son is the favorite player on this team. He's my favorite player. All right? He's not playing as much as he would like to, right? But we do play favorites. My favorite player was the kid who worked their tail off, was a great listener, was a great communicator, and made everybody around him better. I mean, so we really did play our favorites because it fit your philosophy.
Yep. Sometimes you just need that guy who slaps butt. Okay, he's that guy in practice. Hey, good job. He's encouraging. He's positive. That's who you want on your team.
And we spent a lot of time together over 5 months. Well, now it's 11 months or 12 months, but you spend a lot of time together. And who do you want to spend your time with? Someone who's going to lift people up, or someone who's going to be selfish and look out for themselves and tear people down? And I definitely, in my years of having to cut kids at those high school levels, kept a kid who maybe wasn't as good, but he was a builder. He wasn't a destroyer. And that's who I wanted to spend the next 5 months with, because I knew he was going to help others and make our team better. So it isn't
That's
always,
good to hear.
yeah, it isn't always skill-based. No.
Other questions? Yes.
So, early 2000s, early 2000 was the open enrollment time, where you could hop school districts if you wanted to. So, what was the good, bad, and ugly of that? You lose people, you gain people. Was there a lot of
I don't think I did.
I did not. We actually got a kid from North. The year was it,
And one from East.
and one from East.
Yeah, I would say that it was kind of slow at first. It now is not slow anymore. Kids are going to schools. Appleton West had a 6'10" freshman who decided after his freshman year he wanted to go to Neenah. And so he transferred to Neenah and open enrolled there and led Neenah to the state tournament. And that was a huge loss for Appleton West. And so I would say it's been slow to pick up. And now I would say it's much more common. It was common in Milwaukee a long time ago. It was common in Madison because within the school district they allowed open enrollment. And then in the early 2000s, the state opened it up for open enrollment across districts. And so, I would, for the most part, I don't think there's a lot of coaches that are recruiting heavily. I would say it's kids and families that are recruiting. A lot of times kids maybe play 6th, 7th, and 8th grade on an AAU team and become friends with that player, and they open enroll to their school. But I don't know if it's, Shane, you're doing it right now. I still think kids, for the most part, are playing with their friends that they grew up with playing, more than anything.
Yeah, we've had, even Little Shoe, we've had a couple kids move in, but I think it's only been like 2 or 3 in the time that I've been there. There's not been a lot of kids, at least in Little Shoot. So.
And I would say that we knew our elementary, it's interesting, when I first started coaching at West, there were no youth programs in Appleton. And high school coaches probably didn't know their kids in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade unless they came to camp. You got to know them. Now high school coaches know every kid from 3rd grade on in their program, and they're working hard with those kids to make sure that those kids are going to stay with them in their program and not open enroll to a different school. So it's really no different. When Barry Alvarez became the football coach at Wisconsin, he said, I need to build a fence around Wisconsin to keep all of our kids here. You do that as a basketball coach. You make sure that the kids that are in your elementary schools, you know who they are, and you make sure that they're coming to your camps, and you're going to watch them play at their 5th grade games to make sure that you're building relationships with them so that they stay in your program, your school.
Yeah,
So I said we're different because we were parochial. We were, private Catholic school. My feeling was if you went to a Catholic school, grade school, you should be at Xavier. And, just because you live in a neighborhood shouldn't dictate where you have to go to school. And from my perspective is the kids that came to Xavier paid money. And they weren't getting a free education. Their parents were paying taxes for the public school kids, and they were paying taxes to come to our school. So, hey, there's still a big commitment, to come. And we probably lost more kids. He mentioned Pete Wade. Pete Wade went to Xavier his freshman year. I made him play on the freshman team because I felt he was immature, and I don't believe that what seniors talk about in the locker room, freshmen should be listening to. His dad didn't like it. He went to Oshkosh North. Matt McCabe was a great player at Kakana, went to state. Came to Xavier's freshman year, wasn't going to play. Went to Kakana. Hey, great, good. They both went to state, great. We lost them, so what? Okay, this is the world that we live in. You know, each kid has that right to make that decision and go where they feel that they feel valued, they feel safe, and they feel loved. And if that's where they want to be, that's great.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick
Let that
question.
come
across. We
Yes, yeah,
recruited,
great
so
kid.
played.
Great kid.
Chat a little bit about the importance of culture. How did you build it? What did you want your identity to be? How do you communicate that to not only the kids, but then the people in the basketball community as well?
So I'll go first. Mine, and I'm the shortest tenure. So mine was, we didn't have one. You know, it was, I wouldn't, you know, they weren't like laughed at in the halls because they were on the basketball team, but it wasn't something to be on the basketball team. You know, it wasn't. So my biggest thing was to show them that it is a privilege and an honor and of high value to be a part of this. So my like fundraising money went to them. It went to stuff like, all right, everybody's getting travel sweats, everybody's getting this, you're gonna feel proud to wear this. I you know, just small things of, you know, Saturday shoot around, this is I got from my dad, you know, I'm bringing in donuts and I'm bringing in orange juice, and that's probably not what you should be eating before a game, but you know, they didn't play till the night. But that type of culture of like, I wanted kids to feel proud that they were part of it. And once I sort of got to that, then it was like, also, well, then this is the expectations for those things. Like, you understand how hard you work to get to this point, and what's expected of you from an effort perspective, but we're going to do that together. So my biggest thing from culture was to try to help them feel valued, that they could proudly wear basketball gear in the halls from class to class on a Friday, and eventually get to the point where, you know, people were like, hey, good luck tonight, and our teachers were saying, hey, good luck tonight, because they're wearing their basketball stuff, you know, stuff like that, or they're wearing their hoodie, or, you know, things like that. So that's where my focus was, to try to give, because they had been beat down, you know, it's tough to lose, and it really stinks, and to try to get them to understand that we're striving for something and they're important and they're a huge part of our school community, so that was my big thing from a culture standpoint.
I always talk to my kids about, you're an extension of me, right? When you take the floor, right? When people look at you, that's a reflection on me. So I'd go over what I thought what things were important, right? Those are the things that we need to do to make sure when we're on the floor or on the community, we're doing those things, because that reflects on me, as it should, and I don't like to be seen in a bad light. So we would talk about those things quite a bit,
That's good.
right? We would say, hey, no, I wouldn't do that, right? This is what we're doing. I was the dean of students at Appleton West for a while, and while I was coaching, and I walked in, part of my job was walking to get the detention board every morning from the kids that were in detention. And I walked in, and one of my kids was in detention. And he looked up and he saw me, and I looked at him. We didn't say anything. Didn't say anything to each other. I didn't know that he had detention or whatever. And we went to practice that night, and I said, hey, come over here. And I looked at him, and I said, that won't happen. I said, I don't know what happened. I said, that's not going to happen again, right? And he goes, that'll never happen again. Never happened again, right? So I just look at that's, right? They're an extension of me. They're a reflection of me. So we're going to try and do what I think is right. I might not have all the right answers, but we're going to do what I think is right. We're going to try and do what I think is right. So that's what I try to get across to my kids.
Yeah, that's good.
Just one thing on that open enrollment. I was in an era where it really wasn't such a thing. I never coached a kid that didn't live within 2.5 miles of East High School. And it'd probably be a little different now. I think there's more of it going on than you might think. Because I say, where'd that kid come from? Oh, they come from Ashwaubenon. You know, and where's the starting quarterback at North? Well, he couldn't play at Kimberly, so he's transferred over here.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think there's a lot more of it going on than you might think. I don't really care for it. but it is definitely there. And as far as culture goes, I mean, kids look at the top. I mean, how's the varsity playing and things like that. If they're playing well, they want to be part of it, you know, and I think it just kind of takes off from there. And, you know, like in practice, I never used a whistle, never once. And if a kid didn't work hard, I just pointed to the sidelines, and they want to be in the sideline. I said, come back when you're going to start doing it. And we never had a problem that way. And so that's it. I think it's just the way you are develops a culture. So.
And I would say there's kind of two cultures. There's your team culture, but then there's the whole school culture. And I always say this: if your football players are jerks, you're going to have a horrible school year. Okay, because they set the tone for everything in your school. There's 50 of them, 60 of them walked in the halls. Okay, school culture starts then. And if your athletes are good kids, okay, and they treat people well, kids will come to see them. And that's important. How your kids are treating other kids means a lot. And that's you could go to games and you could say there's no culture in this school, okay? Because they don't. People want to see kids that are good people. Hey, I saw that guy in the hall. You can do the same thing with your program, and I believe it is always important as a varsity coach to have program days within your practice. If you don't have a game for 4 days, you're going to do the same stupid thing that you've been doing for the last 4 weeks. Bring your kids in as position players. Let your seniors teach your freshmen. Okay? Have an hour-and-a-half session with point guards. Have an hour session with wings. Have an hour session with big guys. Do it once every 2 weeks. Come on, we as coaches, we do the same thing over and over again. Let your kids teach. Okay? That's the sign of mastery. If they can teach somebody else what you've communicated to them to do it, that's important. Now that freshman has a responsibility. Okay, oh, hey, when I get to be here, I have to teach somebody else. That's culture. Okay? And that gets guys going. We're coaches, we ruin everything. I'm going to say, everybody loves us. We do so many dumb things, I think. Okay? And we learn. I wish I could go back and do it. Because I'm so much smarter now, okay, than I was. And then I think from a culture standpoint, it has to be somewhat competitive. There's a competitive cauldron where guys understand that, hey, you're going to practice. This is going to be competitive, but we can all do it together. We're going to get better. Iron sharpens iron, all those things. But this is this competitive cauldron that goes. And that culture then transforms it. Hey, I want to be a part of this. That kid goes to that game and he's sitting with his parents or he's sitting with his friend. He goes, that kid taught me last week. Okay, yeah, I was working with him. That means something to kids. And that makes it important to carry on your tradition and what you want to do within your program. And I think that's a vital part of it. And stress it to them. Hey, you see kids in the hall, being nice to kids. Seeing kids at a lunch table sitting by themselves. That, you know, we went to a Nina game this year, okay? Nina, they built this huge school. There's 50 students in the student section. We went out, we were with an administrator, and we just were ripping them. Okay, I said, here's $500. Let your kids come free. Okay, what are we doing? Okay, we don't want our kids to come to games? We're going to charge them to come to games? Are we silly? What, so we can make $400? Are we nuts? Okay, let these kids in. What are they? So let them, go play, get them in trouble. They're not going to go out drinking. What are they going to do? Have them do something. Build that. Have pride in your school. It's that to me. I get really frustrated because I go to a lot of games now. There's nobody there. There's nobody in those stands watching those kids, and I'm like, what's going on? It's different.
Just a bit of trivia that I found when I was doing some research on basketball. The principal of Ryan High School, which was the high school before Appleton High School, they had a basketball team, and he wanted to boost the morale of the team. So he investigated what other schools were doing, and they had something called Yell Masters, which eventually became cheerleaders.
Mhm.
But that's exactly what he did. He said, we need yell masters so that the players know that the kids are behind them. I thought that was interesting.
Tell you one thing, I was just thinking of this, and I haven't thought about it in years, but we had a culture, and it just inadvertently happened, is that school's out at 3 o'clock or 3:05, we'd start practice at 3:30. And kids would be running down the hallway. They wanted to play horse with our guys and things like this. And so it was complete chaos till 3:30. Then I'd say, walk-ons out of here. And then they would go and we'd start practice. It just happened. And it got to be that way every year. I mean, they just loved it. They'd run down there and our guys would like to play with them and goofing around and this and that, and boom. You know, it was like that. So that's just something, I didn't devise it, but it just happened. I thought it was great because we had a great fan following. The kids knew they were part of the team. They knew it. And they were. It was legitimate. They were.
It's interesting. So I had an opportunity a number of years ago to do a master's program, and you could design your own master's program. And one of the things that I was doing it on was high school sports. And so I tried to look up high school dynasties and then communicate with how do teams be good for so many years, and then interview coaches, go to those schools, see what's happening. So, so for instance, go to Carmel, Indiana, okay? They've won 22 state swimming titles. What are they doing to continue this dominance, okay, in their city, okay? Go to Johnson City, Kansas, okay? They've won 8 straight state championships. What are they doing in that little school that makes it special, and building that culture? And I think we get caught up in skill development, but that culture thing is a big important thing, and it's interesting to see what people are doing to create that. One of my favorite guys is a guy, and I think probably one of the greatest coaches of all time in any sports, is a guy named Anson Dorrance from North Carolina. He coaches North Carolina women's soccer. He is an amazing coach, and his culture is all based on literature books. He has 8 things that he makes these kids read, and those are his core principles of his culture. And it's amazing what we could learn as basketball coaches from other people. Sometimes we get stuck into, this basketball coach. There's other coaches out there in other sports who do things that could make our game better and make us better coaches.
Jim, for me, culturally, I think of the quote, nothing of great value comes without hard work. And don't expect to be great if you don't work hard. Don't expect, when I was a math teacher, to do well on the math test if you haven't prepared well. Don't expect to make that shot at the end of the game if you haven't already shot that 10,000 times. And so when we were really bad as a basketball program, it's because our kids thought that they could win without putting time in. And so building a culture of working hard at whatever you do to expect to be great.
Can I share something culturally?
Mm-hmm.
We found, as we put our history basketball room together, that we had this, I don't know, did you talk about this already? That we had this strong link to Lawrence in the beginning of basketball in the city of Appleton. And that strong link, it was a culture thing. And so the build-up and the kids watching Lawrence play was a huge thing, and it went through football and other sports also. But because we wondered, how did we become this basketball culture here so early? Why was the state tournament in Appleton until 1920? And then it moved to Madison. But it was that link, we believe it was the link to that college atmosphere, and for the other sports also. But once again, it's that culture thing. The older kids and those younger kids watching and striving. So I like what you said. So thank you.
Can I pick up on one thing that was mentioned?
Sure.
Someone said the stands are pretty empty. I've been away from Appleton for decades, but I'm returning. And my recollection was how much of both the school and the community came, and I went to East when we weren't winning at all. But, so the kids' stands are empty.
I think there's big games that people go to, but on the average, now kids have more to do. They're on their phones, they're doing crazy things, but a lot of times they're not going to the games. The FEA games, I went to probably 4 Nina games this year, was just shocked. And it was a Nina Kaukauna game, there was nobody there from Kaukauna. Their student section had no people in it.
So I think there's a couple of reasons besides
Girls,
not
girls,
only
yep,
kids have
yep,
a lot to
yep.
do or other options on a Friday night, as does the community. The other change you were talking before this all started about, Friday nights.
Friday
was-
night basketball is
Yep.
a tradition.
Yep.
Fish
Friday-
fry, go to the game.
But it was Friday night boys basketball.
Now you better like fish on
You know.
Tuesday night.
Or Monday.
Right, and so even when in the 80s, I remember as a kid, the boys always played on Tuesdays and Fridays down in the Madison area. It was always Tuesdays and Fridays, and the girls were go figure it out, like Mondays or Thursdays or whatever. But Fridays was boys, period. Well, so now Fridays, both schools are playing. So you mentioned you go to the Kaukauna game, and Kaukana's at Nina, and there's no one from Kaukauna there. Well, there's also a chance that the Kaukauna girls are hosting Nina
Right.
there. So, the community has to pick and choose where they want to go. The students have to pick and choose where they want to go. And if there's a Brian Butch, the community will show up because they want to see Brian Butch play. But we have 5 high schools in this city. It's really tough for the community to, it's not a 1-horse town. I could see when Little Chute is good, that place is probably everybody's at the game.
Can be.
Yeah, kind of.
We still struggle at times too, but yes.
Yep. Where okay, we're gonna go.
But we can control that.
Yeah.
Okay, we can control when we're scheduling games. All right, and that's why we don't make it easy either from an administrative standpoint, and we could be better at it.
And we have a lot of people who aren't Appleton people who live in Appleton now.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a history with Appleton West. Their kids didn't go to East, or they didn't go to Xavier or something, and they know their grandchildren. So there isn't always that emotional attachment to those schools either, because we are just coming from all over the place. So it's hard for community members to maybe lock into a high school sporting event or something like that.
Yeah, I think there's been 2 things. One was mentioned already about kids have other things to do, right? There's not this big community in the school in general that was brought up before, right? They're not all, they just have other interests, right? It's not just the sports teams anymore, or the drama, or right? They just have other stuff that they want to do individually, and they don't want, the school spirit, I guess, is not what it used to be, right? So that's plays a big part of it. The other thing that I coached through COVID. It's been tough since COVID. Slowly, we've had more, but COVID would also kind of put a damper on some things as far as crowds and people showing up, and so that slowly I've seen it get better since COVID, but I think that also hurt as far as people coming out a lot.
Coach Biebel made a good point about he's used the football players. I'll use just the players in general. If your team are well respected in the school, well respected in the community, and they have good friends, and they have a big network of friends, like Appleton North this year. Our boys basketball program, we've got some really good players. They're top 3 or 4 in the conference. They'll be in the running for conference again this year. But the student section is all the way up to the top, and they're genuinely there to cheer on their friends, because they're going to Culver's afterwards, which is what I remember when I was in high school. There's those relationships. My son is going to be a senior. He just only plays golf, but he is there to watch his buddies. And then they're going somewhere afterwards, So if you have good young men or good young women who have a big network of friends, those students will come up to support them because they truly love each other. So it really depended on who's a part of that program and the culture that you've built. So it sort of all comes full circle.
So I've had a different experience in that my son played basketball at West High School, and he came home after every game and went downstairs and played video games on his headset with his buddies. And so you can be social now without being with your friends. And it's significantly different than it was 30 years ago. You wanted to be social and you thought, where are people? They're at the basketball game. I'm going to the basketball game so I can see friends, so I can see people. You now can see them on Facebook, or, well, they aren't even using Facebook, obviously, but they're social media, right? And so high school kids are social through technology. They don't have to be social through going to, every varsity game from Little Chute, we went to Rockford Cocos on West College Avenue. That's where we went after every game. Everybody went there. And so my son would come home every Friday night. I'm like, aren't you going out? You guys had a great win tonight. He's like, no, I'm playing video games with Kevin and whoever and ever. Just technology has really changed how kids function.
Ours was Appleton West. Ours was Burger King on Wisconsin Avenue.
Yeah, nice and close.
I think it's more the time of the week, like I said, we used to have Friday night basketball games. Because one thing that hasn't suffered, you go to a football game, there's a lot of people there now, because they know it's every Friday. They know it's every Friday. You're finished with school, you want to go have some fun at night. And football crowds are good, but I think if they played on Tuesdays and all that kind of stuff, I don't think it would be there. I don't. So I think it's more the timing of everything. Well, you're playing this week, you know you're playing on Friday. So they've had big crowds that I've seen. I go to games.
Other questions? Yeah.
Right now, high school basketball does not have a shot clock, right?
Right.
Correct.
What's your opinion on, do they need one? Should there be one?
I think there's a lot of factors that go into the shot clock. I understand why some teams would want it. If you've got very good players, I'd want a shot clock too. That's more possessions for my team. If I don't have a great set of players, maybe I don't want to shoot the ball as fast as they want me to shoot the ball. That's one way I keep the ball from the other team sometimes. So there's that aspect of it, but I also think that it's another, as far as school administration has to take care of, right? I'm sure they're not cheap to install. And then you got to find somebody that's going to run it, right, and run it right. They've got to be trained in it, right, because that could make a difference in a ball game at some point. So there's that as well. But as far as coaches will adjust either way. Like I know it's been shot down the last couple of times it's come up in Wisconsin. I don't think that it's necessary. I don't see, like when I first started in the FEA, there was games that had 28-27, right? That'd be the final score. That's when we were playing quarters. Now I haven't seen that with the change to halves, right? There's more flow to games. Most of the time you'll have low scoring games, but not to that extent. So I'm not against it, but I'm not a big proponent of it either. I don't know if it's going to help the game here in Wisconsin.
I'm now a fan of basketball games. I don't coach any longer. And I probably watch 40 high school basketball games a year. As a fan, I would like to see it. Now, I do like the two halves a lot better. Used to run into those teams where at the end of every quarter, if they had the ball, they're going to hold it for the last minute and a half. Kids don't want to do that. You're a player, you want to play, you want to shoot. And so that always frustrated me. And I just hated playing Fond du Lac because they get a lead on you and they just run the clock and you lose 35-20 or something against them. And I just don't know, like kids want to do that. They want to shoot the ball. And so as a fan, I would say I want a shot clock. Administratively, the number we've been told is like $75,000 to install a shot clock. That's a huge expense, and then the ongoing cost of somebody to run it. You've got to train people. It's a little bit tougher than maybe keeping the book or trying to, does it reset after a foul or after the ball goes out of bounds? So it would be a hassle, but as a fan, I'd like to see it.
Come on, Ron.
Well, how many times?
I know.
I don't know how many times on TV do you see we stop in the game because there's a shot clock violation.
Yeah.
And those guys have been trained to do it the right way and they can't do it. So I think it'd be a big mess personally. The only time it really comes into play, I think, is at the end of the game. You know what I mean? With 2 minutes, I don't think it's during the game necessarily.
Yeah, it depends. I like high school basketball now. It's more wide open than it's ever been. When I first started coaching, Dick Bennett was up at Green Bay. You played a man-to-man half-court defense. You did not switch on screens. You did the blocker mover offense. You know, and the game is different now. I really like the flow of high school basketball games now. Unless there's a coach that holds the ball the last minute of each half. I don't know.
And I would say I was against it, but I'm leaning more towards it now. As long as it's not too quick. 30's way too short. 35 is probably a good number, but
I'm
That's a long
more
time.
worried about
It's a long time.
NIL.
It's still.
That has been approved in Wisconsin now for high school athletes,
Mhm.
name, image, and likeness, which means they can get paid. Just like college athletes can get paid, high school athletes now can get paid. Just was passed. And I'm interested to see where it goes. One of the reasons that it did make me happy is this past year, Wisconsin laws, probably the top 6 or 7 high school players in the state went to prep schools in states that pay NIL. So they left their high school team. So Kai Rogers was the best big in the state from Wauwatosa West. He went to IMG Academy. So a lot of guys are leaving. They're going out of state to prep schools where they can get paid. And I'm hoping that NIL does that it keeps high school players in Wisconsin, our best players, because I want to go watch them play. But I am worried about, what does it mean?
There's a ton of restrictions. It doesn't speak to 99.5% of the high school student athletes. It has no impact on them. It's maybe those kids that, because the schools can't be involved. They can't do any advertisements with even their school colors. I mean, it's like the school's not involved with it at all. You cannot be an alumni and support a kid from the school that you went to school. You can't have any family that went to I mean, there are a ton of restrictions to even be eligible to receive any sort of NIL money. So
Won't that affect how the kid plays as a teammate? I mean,
I just don't think you're going to see much of it, but it could, yeah. But who's giving it? I mean, who?
Yeah, there's
wants
always
a
going
kid
to be jealousy, right? I mean, there was the kid. I think there was a quarterback from Michigan, freshman. I think I read somewhere that he's going to get like $6 million coming in as a freshman. Well, if you're another player on that team, yeah, like that kid's making $6 million. I mean, I think jealousy is going to be part of it at some point, right? I mean, it's your teammate and all, but he's got $6 million. I don't. So I mean, that could be a factor. Yes.
Yeah. I think the bigger, does it shift completely to there's no sports in high schools? And it all becomes a club game, and it's like Europe, okay? And do we go there? Can schools afford it? Okay, with everything going on. So where are we gonna put our money, that kind of stuff, because it could go right to club. It's a shame, but the world changes, and Europe's like that, so it could happen.
The interesting thing is high school sports came in like basketball. A lot of it was because of the gambling that was happening in semi-pro teams. So 16-year-old kids in the early 1900s were out traveling on these semi-pro teams, and one of the solutions was, well, let's have high school teams. And so it'd be interesting if we go in the other direction. But certainly, again, it's a very small percentage of kids that are impacted by this. And, the NBA is seeing the best players in the NBA are non-Americans. I blame AAU because kids are playing a lot and not working on their skill development. But there's also an element that European kids are not going to school. They're in clubs at 14 years old, just working on whatever sport that they play. I don't know if we'll go there. I still hope. I hope for a long future of high school basketball.
I don't know if you talked about this, we arrived late, but academics and sports, basketball, all of them. Is there statistical proof that academics or sports helps academics? I don't know how involved as coaches are you getting?
I assume it has to.
Well, in the last 10 years, have you ever heard of any college athlete flunking out of school that semester?
No.
It used to be all the time, and now it's like impossible. Can't remember the last guy that said he didn't make grades. He can't play. And I don't know what they're doing there.
Tons of
Lot of
resources. A lot of tutoring, exactly. There's so much
I
resources
know, but
that goes into
there's other,
college kids.
Right.
there's other things going on.
I agree.
I think there absolutely is accountability that comes with being part of an athletic team that transitions into your academics. You can't be eligible for sports if you're not doing well in school. Coach Knudsen talked about expectations for your student athletes, that they are good students, they are good kids, they are leaders in your school. Steve Jurgensen was a coach in Kimberly, and he said the same thing Coach Biebel said. If you can have a great fall, maybe your football team goes to state, maybe your girls' volleyball team wins a state championship, you can set a tone for the entire school year with those kids being leaders in your school. And so I think there's a great connection between kids who are involved in co-curriculars and the academic achievement that they have.
You know, I'll go back to your early questions about making cuts. Well, if this kid's struggling academically and it comes down to I got to make 2 cuts, I can't guarantee the kid who's struggling in the classroom it's worthwhile to. Now, there's the thing, maybe he needs basketball to do it, but could be gone halfway through. So that's the other thing. And a lot is, from a coaching standpoint, you can dictate academics in many ways. So depending on practice time, so if you have freshmen who aren't going to practice, depending on what their time is, when they get out of school, throw them in study hall. So we mandatory study halls from 3 o'clock to 4:30 if you're not going to practice till 5 o'clock. What are you going to do, sit around and mess around? No, you're in getting your homework done, because you know when you're done with practice, you're tired. You're not going home and studying. So you can do things. You can monitor, checklists that go out to teachers. Hey, has so-and-so completed all his homework, every day? Sign it, okay? You can help kids be better academically and make sure if you stress it, they'll know it's important also.
And the other add-on to that is that this Appleton get-together here.
Mm-hmm.
The Appleton School District is pretty clear that extracurriculars are extra.
Mm-hmm.
That the curricular part is first. I mean, if little Johnny wants to sleep in and miss first hour, he's ineligible for any practice or game that night. Period, end of story. Like, we get an attendance list from our secretary every day that says who was out for an appointment, like a dentist appointment, that's not what we're talking about. But if you think you're gonna just sleep in, or you're gonna go skip after lunch and have a 2-hour lunch, you cannot even suit up that day. We have a very strict policy when it comes to grades. 1F is you can keep practicing, but you cannot play, and there's time periods to be able to get that fixed. So I think also the culture of the school district says, no, this is the expectation for you to be involved in the play, or to be involved. I mean, it's not just sports. To be on the debate team, you have to have your ducks in order. You have to take care of your time and manage your time. You need to get in for the extra help during our flex periods or our homeroom periods. So our district has created a culture of academics are first to the sports.
And high school kids work so hard to be involved in a sport. The summer workouts, all that they put into it, I think those are the kids we are least worried about, because they have developed a work ethic. They don't have a choice. You can't be a part of a varsity sport if you aren't working hard, and that carries over into the classroom. They are conscientious, hardworking. Like Coach Knudsen said, his son's in high school in the summer and he goes to bed at 9:30 at night because he's got to get up and he's got to work out. And so we just find high school kids, whenever somebody says, this generation, I tell them this generation works harder at many things than the generation did 2-3 ago, because they have to if they want to be part of that sport.
Yeah, those Gen Xers.
Thank you, coaches, for your sharing of experiences, your passion, your receptive comments. Thank you, audience, for your questions, which engendered more responses from each of the coaches. If you haven't already done so, please enjoy the exhibits and the rest of the museum, particularly the sports exhibit, which currently is basketball. And thank you very much.
I just want to also just Claudine sent out the email to all of us, and just thank you. I really thank you all for coming. I mean, I didn't even know if anybody was going to show up. Like, who wants to listen to us? I mean, so it was, it's humbling. So thank you for listening and spending your evening with us.